An old farmer named Joachim found an injured mare in the middle of the forest. Without thinking twice, he decided to take her to his humble farm to take care of her. But a few days later, something unbelievable occurred. What he discovered left everyone speechless and changed his existence constantly. Joachim pressed his hat on his head as he watched the first rays of sunlight illuminate the fields of his farm. His life was basically marked by the routines of feeding the chickens, cleaning the small stable, and checking the fence that surrounded his property. Since his wife, Laura, passed away years ago, he has lived in isolation, dedicating his days to keeping the farm running with the little funds he had. That morning, as usual, Joachim took his machete and headed to the nearby forest, where he used to cut dry branches to use as firewood. As he walked among the trees, he heard a distinct sound, a delicate, almost imperceptible neigh. He stopped, frowning, and followed the sound to a small clearing hidden in the bushes. There, lying on the muddy ground, was a pale mare, covered in mud and stained with dried blood. Its back legs had visible cuts, and one of them appeared severely swollen. Panting with exhaustion, the animal tried, in vain, to lift its head. Joachim remained motionless for a moment, assessing the scene. It wasn't uncommon to find lost or injured animals in the forest, but I'd never seen one in such a critical condition. He knew that helping that mare would be an immense challenge, and perhaps even a burden he could not bear. But leaving her there, suffering alone, was a thought he couldn't accept. "Calm down, girl," he murmured, approaching slowly. The mare raised her head with difficulty, suspicious. Joachim bent down to inspect it. Extraordinarily, he took his handkerchief out of his pocket and cleaned one of the superficial cuts, while he thought about how to take her to the farm. He improvised a harness with ropes, and with great patience, managed to place the mare in an old cart that he used to transport firewood. The journey back was slow and exhausting, but when he reached the farm, he settled her in a corner of the stable, spreading dry straw and leaving a bucket of fresh water beside her. That night, Joachim could barely sleep. Between tiredness and worry, he decided that he would do everything in his power to save the mare. He had no experience with veterinary treatments, but he knew he needed to start with the basics. The next day, Joachim went to the store of Dom Ernesto, the owner of the local grocery store, to buy disinfectants and bandages. When he mentioned the reason for the purchase, Ernesto frowned. "An injured mare? And do you think it's worth spending the little you have on it?" Joachim ignored the comment and returned home with the supplies. Upon arrival, he treated the mare's wounds with great care, cleaning the cuts and bandaging her hind legs. As he worked, he couldn't help but reflect on how this small act of compassion was already transforming his lonely routine. In the Golden Valley, news traveled fast. It didn't take long for the neighbors to find out about the mare's presence on Joachim's farm. Some came out of curiosity, others to criticize. "Why take care of an animal that will only give you more work?" asked Donna Emilia, a neighbor known for her harsh comments. "I didn't bring it to sell it, Emilia. I brought it to help you," Joachim replied, firmly but calmly. Although he faced suspicious looks, he did not let himself be shaken. "I felt like I was doing what was necessary." After a few days, Joachim decided to call Dr. Vicente, the only veterinarian in the region. Vicente was known for being direct and meticulous. After examining the mare, the diagnosis was clear. The recovery would be long, and the costs would be high. "She suffered a lot, Joachim, but with patience and care, she can recover. Are you willing to move on?" Without hesitation, Joachim nodded. He knew it would be a huge financial sacrifice, but something inside his soul compelled him to continue. As the weeks passed, the mare, now called Estrella, began to recover. Joachim started waking up motivated every day, feeling that his life finally had a greater purpose. Once, while cleaning the stable, he noticed something peculiar. Estrella began to neigh more loudly and take small steps. Excited, Joachim realized that the mare was once again trusting him and trusting life. However, it was only months later that the real miracle occurred. Upon opening the stable one morning, Joachim found Estrella with a foal by her side. He had no idea she was pregnant when he rescued her. The foal's arrival brought a new shine to the farm. Joachim, once so lonely, now had a small family by his side. He realized that by saving Estrella, he was also saving himself. Looking up at the starry sky that night, he murmured, "One day at a time, Estrella. You brought the light back into my existence." Leave your like and subscribe to the space to follow the outcome of this exciting narrative and not miss out on more inspiring narratives like this. And so, the connection between the former farmer and the Mare became a lesson in hope, compassion, and transformation. The birth of the foal was an event that shook the small life of the Golden Valley. Many of the neighbors who had previously criticized Joachim now showed up to observe the new member of the farm. Even Dona Amelia, who used to be harsh with her words, stopped at the fence one day to admire the colt playing in the pasture. "Joachim, I think I underestimated you. He's wonderful," he said, with a shy smile. Joachim, surprised, just nodded. He wasn't about proving something to others, but about following what his heart told him was necessary. As the months passed, Estrella returned to being a vigorous and healthy mare. The foal, which Joachim named Sol, grew quickly, filling the farm with energy and joy. Despite the economic challenges he faced, Joachim found creative ways to overcome these difficulties. He began selling small portions of mare's milk to interested neighbors and occasionally offered tours to local children. One day, while Joachim was working in the fields, he received a visit from an unusual person. He was a tall, well-dressed individual who introduced himself as Marcos, a businessman from the neighboring city. He explained that he had heard about Joachim and his dedication to saving Estrella. "I heard that you took care of her like no one else would," said Marcos, with admiration in his voice. "I can be bold and want to buy Estrella and the colt to carry out part of it. I'm willing to pay a great price for both." Joachim remained silent for a few moments. The proposal was tempting, and the money would solve many of their problems. However, when he looked at Estrella and Sol playing in the pasture, he felt that he could not be separated from them. "I appreciate your offer, Mr. Marcos, but Estrella and Sol are not for sale. They are my family now," Joachim replied firmly. The businessman smiled, respecting the old farmer's decision. Before leaving, he left a card with Joachim, saying that if he changed his mind, the offer would remain standing. Over time, the narrative of Joachim, Estrella, and Sol spread steadily. The old farmer's simplicity and determination inspired many in the community. Her previously critical neighbors began to help in small but significant ways. Some offered food, others brought medicines, and there were even those who helped with the work on the farm. Star and Sun have become symbols of resilience and compassion in the Golden Valley. In Joachim, they were much more than animals. They were living proof that, like us, in the most difficult times, kindness and dedication could transform lives. Years later, at an advanced age, Joachim sat on the porch of his house, observing the countryside he loved so much. Sol, now a beautiful adult horse, ran freely through the pasture, while Estrella rested under the shade of a tree. He smiled as he remembered that day in the forest when he met Estrella for the first time. At that moment, he didn't know that his decision to help her would change not only her existence, but also his own. Joachim took out an old diary and wrote one last sentence before closing the notebook. "Saving Estrella was my biggest victory. But in the end, she was the one who saved me." Years passed and time left its mark on both Joachim and Estrella. The old farmer, now with his hair completely white, felt the weight of age in every movement, but his soul was still illuminated by the presence of Star and Sun. One day, Joachim went to the stable to start his day as he always did. When he opened the door, he found Estrella lying on the straw, breathing heavily. His eyes, once so bright, now seemed tired. but they continued to convey the same kindness that Joachim knew so well. "Calm down, girl. I'm here," he murmured, kneeling down beside her. He knew this moment was coming, but he never imagined it would be so painful. With his voice breaking, he stroked his mane, remembering all the moments they shared since that day in the forest. "You gave me more than I could dream of, Estrella. It brought light to a life that was dark. I will never forget this," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Estrella neighed lightly, as if she was trying to comfort him one last time. Sul, who was in the pasture, slowly approached and stood next to Joachim, as if he understood that something was wrong. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, Estrella took her last breath with Joachim by her side, holding her head carefully. Silence took over the stable, broken only by the delicate sound of the wind. Joachim remained there for hours, unable to say goodbye completely. The next day, with the help of some neighbors, Joachim prepared a small memorial for Estrella in the most beautiful corner of the pasture, under a huge tree where she used to rest. He planted flowers around it, saying it would be a place where his memories of her would live forever. Sul, now Joachim's only companion, seemed to deeply feel his mother's absence, but at the same time, he became even closer to the former farmer, following him to every corner of the farm. Months later, on a peaceful night, Joachim sat at the table with a lit candle and wrote a letter, something that had never been written before. "Once upon a time, my dear star, when I found you in the forest, I thought I was saving your life, but in fact, it was you who saved mine. All these years, you have given me strength, purpose, and a new reason to believing that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Now that you are no longer here, I notice a longing that seems unbearable. But when I look at Sol, I see your spirit, your courage, your beauty, you, because this is what you deserve. Thank you for everything, Estrella. You were not just my mare, you were my family, my friend, my miracle." He left the letter at Estrella's memorial, and, when he got up, he saw the stars in the sky, feeling closer to her. Time continued to pass, and Joachim noticed his strength diminishing, but he was not isolated. Sol remained by his side, faithful and affectionate, as if he knew that now it was his turn to take care of Joachim until his final day. Joachim rested in his rocking chair, watching the field illuminated by the sunset. He noticed a gentle breeze passing by him, and for a moment, he swore he heard Estrella neighing in the distance. He closed his eyes with a peaceful smile on his lips, murmuring his last words. "I'm coming, Estrella. One day at a time, as we always said." When his neighbors found him, he was at peace, as if he had gone to a place where Estrella was waiting for him. Currently, Joachim's farm is a place of vivid memories. Sul continues to live there, cared for by neighbors who have come to respect and love Joachim for his courage and kindness. Estrella's memorial stands untouched, with ever-fresh flowers surrounding it, an eternal symbol of the unbreakable connection between a man and his mare. In the hearts of everyone who heard her story, a powerful lesson remained. Kindness and affection can transform lives, and the bonds we create are never forgotten, even when we say goodbye. And so, in the small Vale Dorado, the story of Joachim, Estrella, and Sol continues to be told, inspiring generations to believe that the true value of existence lies in acts of love. Were you moved by this story? Did the story of Joachim and Estrella touch your heart? Be sure to subscribe to the space here so you don't miss out on more inspiring narratives like this. And so, the connection between the former farmer and the mare became a lesson in hope, compassion, and transformation.